What we see is tons of manager burnout. Sometimes companies don't realize at the top, it's easy to say, well, they're burned out, they'll get over it. The truth is that has massive impact on your business results. When people feel less overwhelmed and more supported and more valued, ironic thing is they actually work harder.
What if every manager in your company had their own executive coach, a role-play partner for hard conversation, and a team-building facilitator? And it costs you 1% of what you're spending now? That's not hypothetical. In this episode, I sit down with Jennifer Dulski, 25 years leading teams at Facebook, Google, and Yahoo, Stanford Business School faculty and founder of Rising Team, to show you how AI is transforming leadership development from an executive perk into a company-wide system. So by the end of this conversation, you will understand why engagement surveys alone are failing you, what a super manager actually looks like in practice, and how the best companies are scaling human connection, not replacing it with AI.
At Rising Team, we build an AI leadership development platform that essentially turns every manager into a super manager. The way we do that is by combining an AI, we call it leadership personal trainer, and software-guided team sessions that help the team connect and bond together, who says, I'm going to take an intake, I'm going to understand your starting point, and I'm going to develop an action plan and work with you on the things you most need.
How it's been easy for people to embrace, especially for those people that have more a traditional approach and they want to still, talk to somebody else, so have an unbiased opinion from a human.
The tech changes have been really dramatic. The first thing is...
Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of the World Class Leader Show. Even today, I'm super excited to have with us Jennifer Dulski. So Jennifer has over 25 years of executive experience leading global teams at top companies, including Facebook, Google, Yahoo, and Change.org. And she is the founder and CEO of Rising Team, a team performance platform that helps companies boost engagement and retention, build trust and connection, and improve manager and team effectiveness. So that's super critical topic. But even important to say, Jennifer also serves on the faculty of Stanford Graduate School of Business. Also, she writes about leadership and future at work for Fortune, Fast Companies. She's a LinkedIn influencer, so she's very active and is the author of Purposeful, so a Wall Street Journal bestselling on how each of us can start movements that make a difference. So Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I'm very excited because that's a topic, first of all, really interest of me, given the work I do, leadership team, a lot of teams, but also it's a topic that interests everybody because it's one of talking and dealing with some of the major challenges, meaning engaging people in the workplace. And I really will start with this, because we had a conversation before, and we'll come back to this a little bit later in this conversation. But, most leaders really still rely on engagement surveys to get the pulse, right, about the organization. But then they panic, they form tiger teams, they form initiatives, they do a lot of things trying to do the right thing after they heard, what the people said. But still, they don't really know how to move people. And you believe that's AI can finally make leadership development scalable inside of that frame. So before we get into the AI, I'm very curious to hear what's happening in the workplace right now. We might workplace tornado. What's your view? What's happening?
You mentioned my background. That was me. I was an org and division leader inside these big companies. And, I thought it was hard to lead teams when I was doing this 15, 20 years ago. And it's just so much harder now. We call it the workplace tornado because there's just a variety of factors that are circling around managers, and it makes it harder for them to lead. The first is a sense of constant transformation. So every company we talk to, we work with companies like Google and Hershey and HP, all of them are going through some kind of transformation, new leadership, new strategy, trying to handle a different marketplace and tariffs and, everything is happening that's causing that constant transformation. The second is the continuation of hybrid and distributed work. So we know from the pandemic, everyone went remote and then there was hybrid. Some companies are going fully back to the office, but the truth is the vast majority of companies still have hybrid work, which means people aren't together every day, and widely globally distributed teams. So that is hard on managers. The third one is that there's like a constant drive for efficiency. So, companies are being pressured to do more with less. They're flattening that layer of middle management, which means the managers who are left are having to have more scope than ever with fewer resources. And then the fourth factor in the workforce tornado is intense pressure around AI. Every company on earth right now is trying to figure out, how do I use it? How do I leverage it? How do I not get into trouble? How do I use it for my own product and for my processes? And so managers are sitting in this whirlwind right now, trying to manage all those four forces. It's really tough.
It is because they're not just operating in isolation. So all these forces, they're all actually attacking, if you like, in a context where the level of uncertainty and ambiguity is increasing. So the current context, the current environment is not helping to clarify or to prioritize how to deal with these forces. They are all coming together, which I think is a perfect definition of what you meant, what you said in terms of the tornado, because it's coming strong and it's hitting
Yes,
hard on
exactly,
people,
and
right?
they're in the eye of the tornado, and the
Yeah,
great news is that unlike 15, 20 years ago, we now have tools that can actually help them effectively manage this, and that's what makes it so exciting to work in this space today. Is with AI, now I can give every manager inside a company the same level of support that I got as an executive. As an exec, I had my own executive coach, several different coaches. I was sent to incredible trainings. I had an executive assistant. I had someone in HR who would show up anytime I wanted to run a team building session with my team. That was great for me. It was really hard for me to scale that out to my team, and it was really expensive. And so now I can give every manager essentially that set of services through AI for 1% of the cost of what it used to take me as an exec to do it.
yeah, and we'll come back to this because very curious to hear, how the solution that you provide, it really, really tackle the challenge that you're facing. But if we stay a second on these forces, I'm interested to understand from you how leaders right now they are trying at least to tackle these forces, how they're trying to deal with all changes and transformation, the habit
Yeah.
distributed approach in a more conventional way. AI is there, but for many leaders, it's still there. So it doesn't really, I don't know how to use it in service of what you said.
That's right. And without using the tools, it's really hard. What we see is tons of manager burnout. Gartner says three-quarters of managers say they're completely overwhelmed. They're doing a lot of manual work. So McKinsey says that managers on average spend 18% of their time doing just pure manual operational work, which is one day a week of, writing updates and trying to take the new strategy from leadership and translate it to your team, and not really being in the core of the important work, which are two factors. One is setting strategy and vision and prioritizing work, and the other is spending time with humans, either face to face, whether it's in person or on camera. Those are the truly important jobs of managers and leaders, and because of this tornado, many of them get to spend far less time on that, and it's causing a lot of stress and burnout.
Yeah. So the level of the impact on people, mental health, the impact on people, time, stress, etc. now is getting is getting worse. And I'm with you. I mean, that's what I also experience in organization right now.
That's right. And the other thing that sometimes companies don't realize, at the top, it's easy to say, well, they're burned out, they'll get over it. The truth is that that has massive impact on your business results.
Oh
So,
yeah, totally.
when we look at our data, less than 1% of your time invested in making your team feel valued and supported turns out to drive 33% lift in retention of your top talent. So, and also drives up productivity. Like when people feel less overwhelmed and more supported and more valued, the ironic thing is they actually work harder.
Yeah, so it's such a strong correlation between how people feel and the performance they produce. So, and I think it's great that you bring this up because there is always still there is this misconception that people will get over it. So they can relax a bit more. They can take few more holidays. They can do all of that so they can go back and keeping and stay engaged with the business and with their own performance. That doesn't work in that way. And when there is at least my experience, a deeper disconnection between where people are and what they're supposed to do, then everything falls apart. And I think it's a good segue to the conversation that I said at the beginning, this idea about the survey, right? So I've been in corporate many years, as many of people, they are watching or listening to this episode. and they're not very familiar with engagement survey. So I think it's a good intention slash attempt for people to try to understand, to have a taste about what's going on in the organization. But also, and I remember that, and you and I discussed with that, there is also sort of, I think you call it emotional cycle, where, survey drops and then there is a panic. And then after the panic, based on results, then tiger teams or something gets activated. But then it's not really clear what kind of an impact that needs to be generated.
Right. So engagement surveys are so interesting and they are important. And the reason they're important is because it's been proven over and over again that the results of those surveys correlate to business results. So, Gallup, who's really been doing this for decades and decades, shows that the top quartile, most engaged companies are more profitable, higher margins, all of that, and more productivity, everything you want. The challenge is that most engagement surveys only measure engagement. They don't move it. So all you're doing is getting results back that every time, and this was me, as you said, and I was a leader in these orgs, I would get it back, something would drop. It was back to the whiteboard every time. We had to pull people together. We had to find out more. We had to come up with some idea. This takes tons of time. And maybe that time would be worth it if it actually moved the needle. But as you said, it's not clear that it did. And also, most companies measure engagement on an annual cycle. So even if you did something in the first few months, you had no idea if it had
Oh,
any.
and this context will be totally different
Exactly. And all the factors
scenario.
around it were different. And then
Yes.
some companies have gone to more frequent pulse. They might ask one question a week or something like that. So they get more frequent data, but they still don't know how to move the numbers, which is the most challenging part. And one of the things that I've seen that actually is a negative trend on this front is that sometimes companies are actually now keeping the results at the highest levels only. So they might distribute the results back to only VP and above. And so that means individual directors, managers, et cetera, don't even see the results of their own team, which means they really can't act on it because they don't know. And it's also bad because employees who are taking those surveys don't know what's happening with their voice. They appreciate being heard, but when there's no communication back and no action back, they don't really feel like they were listened to. And so, as I said, that the amazing thing is if you have tools that are targeted against those specific areas. And again, most engagement surveys measure the same things. They measure whether people feel appreciated, whether they are clear on what's expected of them, whether they feel safe to speak up, whether they intend to stay, all of those things. At Rising Team, we actually built software with team synchronous team sessions that target each of those areas. And we've seen when you give people the right tools, you actually can move engagement. We see it in test versus control. We see it in longitudinal measurement. If you have the right tools, you can absolutely move it.
Yeah, and now I'm very curious to hear, the tools and the approach that you are taking. I just want to circle back on what you said before in terms of the data, what you measure. Look, to me, surveys, at least that's my view, it's more like a lagging indicator. I mean, you're measuring something critically important, but that doesn't say, because it's not a leading indicator in terms of the future. You're trying to, it's quite natural that you have kind of a reactive approach because you're reacting to what you see in something that happened in the past, but doesn't necessarily connect what could be the future. That's one point. That's my experience. The other experience I have with surveys is it's so funny because then, of course, depends on the quality of the survey, but I don't want to get into that. However, one of the action that I remember quite well, and I can see, one of my clients did the same, is after the survey, they need to go back and asking people, what you really mean by X, Y, Z. So, and that's to me is open up a loop that to me is not definitely something that it's worth doing. But let's pause on that because I think we are all aligned with that, and I think is a common problem. By the way, even HR leaders, I know, they don't really love that as a solution, but that's what they got so far, at least. So that's what they're dealing with. So you have a comment on that?
Well, just the only one of the positives, I guess, if we're going to give it a positive at all, is that there's lots of historical data and there are lots of benchmarks. And so the one benefit of using a survey that's similar is that you can see how it changes over time. And also you can compare yourselves to other best in class companies and know what you're aiming at. So there are some small positives in it.
No, it's a very valid point, actually. It's a very, very valid point. So you need that data. In a world where we measure everything, it's still a very relevant data to use. So let's talk about your solution. So you said at the beginning, this idea of the super manager.
Yeah.
So tell me more, what's your view about that? Because I know, I remember one of the analogy, I think is a sports analogy. You said people, they need a personal coach, then they need like the athletes, right? The nutritionist,
That's
then
right.
the psychologist. So now it's possible for
It
manager. Is
is
that what you're looking
possible.
for?
That's right. So at Rising Team, we build an AI leadership development platform that essentially turns every manager into a super manager. And the way we do that is by combining an AI, we call it leadership personal trainer, a coach, a role play partner, and software guided team sessions that help the team connect and bond together. And then that works together as a system. So that coach, that trainer gets smarter and smarter about your team. If you think about traditional executive coaches, traditionally they work only with the executive and they get to know that person better and better, but they don't necessarily know the team that person is working with. And when you have to go have a hard conversation as a leader about, someone who's not getting a promotion or some tough feedback, it's really helpful if you know the unique preferences and style of that person. So we have a tool that helps you do both of those things. The way I think about it, as you said, is like a sports analogy. And I love sports. I love sports movies. I was a coxswain on the rowing team in high school and college. So most of my leadership lessons come from sports. And the way I think about it is like, for our personal fitness, we would get a personal trainer if we could afford it. Almost everybody I ask, would you like a personal fitness trainer? They all say yes. And the reason they don't get one is because it's expensive. And the great thing about a personal fitness trainer is they can also adapt to the needs of each person. So if you and I were training for a triathlon, as an example, by any chance, do you like to run, swim, or bike? Which one is your favorite?
None of them. This is not my favorite sport. I'm more on a racket sport, but I totally appreciate the effort that is required to become a professional, but even a great athlete in that
Yeah.
sport.
So let's say, for instance, if I take my team, I have my head of design. She grew up as a competitive swimmer and she still loves to swim. I like to run. I'm not like a marathon runner yet, but I like to run. If we both had a personal trainer who was preparing us for a triathlon, they would not give us the same plan. Her plan would focus more on running and mine would focus more on swimming so that we could end at the same outcome.
And
Leadership
then
is
you
the
need
same.
three different coaches. So with the three different
You
ability and
might,
skill set, you
exactly.
might, right?
And leadership is very much the same way. We're trying to get people to the same outcome, right? We know what excellent leadership looks like. It's very clear in the science. People who create psychologically safe teams, who create clarity of vision, who give good, clear feedback, who make people feel appreciated and valued. That's the end point we want to get everybody to. And people are all starting at a different place. So what was happening before we had AI tools or tools like Rising Team is that we would put managers in cohorts. We would teach them all the same thing at the same time. And then we'd send them back to their teams without any tools to take that knowledge forward. And we'd cross our fingers that they do anything we taught them. And some would and some wouldn't. And that was me. I was trying desperately to translate what I had learned to my team, and it took a lot of time and effort for me to do that. Now I can give each manager their own leadership personal trainer through AI who says, I'm going to take an intake, I'm going to understand your starting point, and I'm going to develop an action plan and work with you on the things you most need. Some of it will be, so in Rising Team we have three components. One is working sessions with your AI coach, things like going back and forth to develop really crystal clear goals or create a one-on-one agenda that's really helpful. The second is role play, and we can dive deeper into this if you want to, which is how do you practice hard conversations voice to voice with another person, in this case an AI coach, who will help you get better at having those tough conversations. And the third is team building. So, in a sense, we have an AI team building assistant that helps you run these interactive sessions with your team, again, face to face on the key topics that drive high performing teams. And this is one of the key factors I believe is so important, is that a lot of the AI products that are out there right now are just one on one with you and the AI. And to be a truly great leader, that is insufficient. It is necessary and helpful, but not sufficient, because you also need time directly with your team.
Oh,
And
totally.
so, what we're trying to do is facilitate both of those things. How do I make you a better leader? And how do I help you do that live in a synchronous way with your team?
Yeah, and look, for somebody like me, that has been coaching. I've been coaching people at one-to-one level, but also leadership team. I can definitely understand what are the limitations of working with individuals, with the humans inside of that frame that you clarified. So I'm definitely with you. I can definitely see the potential. But if you like to, I would like to ask you two questions. So one is, how does it work in practice? Meaning, so is the team working with the, so for example, let's imagine that the team is all together in a meeting room and they need to work together as a team on a number of things. How does it work with AI? So there is a screen with AI, and so tell me a little bit more about that.
It's a little bit different than that, at least the Rising Team version. The AI is more behind the scenes with people as individuals. So, for instance, let's say I'm working on goal setting as an example. I might say, okay, it's like this is a good time. It's the beginning of the year. Everybody's setting goals. The AI coach up front, it's going to ask you again what your baseline is. And then, for instance, it might say, do you have draft goals to start with, or are you creating them from scratch? And one on one, they're working with AI to help them get better at this. So if you say, I'm creating them from scratch, then it's going to say, well, let me tell you what a world-class goal looks like. Here's what they look like. Now tell me a little bit about what you're trying to do. And it kind of goes back and forth with you to help you create those goals. That's, what the personal trainer and coach is. Then if you follow along, let's say you want to work with the team to communicate those goals and to make sure everybody has a clear sense of how to prioritize and even know who to put on what. It might guide you to run a session with your team. And let me give you an example of what one of those looks like. So we have one of our sessions called Natural Talents. It's actually something I built because I was frustrated with the more personality-based assessments that we often use. And I see the value in personality-based assessments. I just had a hard time using them at work. I would say, okay, now I know someone is an equalizer or they're an EN, whatever. And it's like, how do I use it? So instead, we made an assessment about the 9 talents you really need people to do at work. So one, for instance, is envision. I need some people to come up with really big ideas. One is plan. I need other people to, you know, create timelines and document and keep people on track. And I need a third person to get everybody else in the org excited. It's called persuade. So everybody, there's this assessment, and the AI guides you to schedule and prepares you to run a session with your team, but the AI isn't doing that. You, as the leader, are running that session with your team, but you're following guidance from software that just says, okay, here you hit go. Now you do the warm up. Now everybody takes the assessment. Now the results come back. Everybody sees them. Here's how you put people together on project teams. And then over time, your AI coach then also remembers and understands which people on your team have which natural talents. So on my team, for instance, if I go to create a new project and I want someone in the room who's going to help me just think of really out there creative ideas, I actually invite our head of operations, even though he's not on our product team, because that is one of his natural talents. He loves it. It brings him energy. He's so good at it. Um, and that would be counterintuitive to a lot of people, but I know that. And my AI coach remembers that and reminds me to do that. So in practice, it's a system that works together. Some of it is with the team and some of it's on your own with the AI.
Yeah, that's great. And is learning as you go.
Exactly.
So
It's learning
that
as
is critical.
yeah. And then if I follow through the rest of the system, let's say we put the goals together and I have someone on my team who misses all their goals or misses a lot of their goals. And then I have to have a hard conversation. Then I go back to the AI and I practice that conversation a few times before I have to have it with the real person.
That's great. And I'm a big fan of role playing. So to me, it's one of the most significant impact that can be created, in coaching is the role playing. And I do more,
I'm sure you
manually. So
do it with your
I
right
do a
with your
lot. I do a lot. And I can definitely see the value of having an AI, agent working on it. How do you think? I mean, it's been a while that you've been working on this, and I know that you already had a very significant success. But how do you think people? I mean, maybe is a part of your experience. How it's been easy for people to embrace, especially for those people that have more a traditional approach, and they want to still, talk to somebody else, to have an unbiased opinion from a human. So, do you see like an easy implementation because the new generation they're getting things like cupcake, or has no any sort of generational, element?
well, there's certainly a generational element all the time in how people adopt tech and how comfortable they are with different things. We definitely see people using AI across all generations, all functions, et cetera. The nice thing about our system is it doesn't replace human to human interaction. So what we see is that as long as you do some amount of intentional human connection, then the AI feels additive on top. When you take away the human connection, then the AI it just feels empty, I think is the thing. And so, um, one of the things that we try to do is ensure that the experience people have with the AI is also positive and measure that over time. So, as I said, when we look at the data across all different kinds of teams and companies. We have customers from Google and Airbnb and Hershey to, K through 12 school teachers and, the Massachusetts state probation officers use Rising Team. And the really amazing thing to me has been that because the drivers of high performing teams are the same, teams of all kinds, all levels, all functions, are getting really amazing results from using essentially the same product. And the way I think about it, we get a lot of skepticism about AI up front. People say, well, won't this be bad? Like if I appreciate someone and my appreciation note was drafted by AI, won't people hate that? And my answer to them is, well, if the options are drafted by AI or not do it at all, what would people prefer? Because that is what's happening in the alternative. When you're burned out and you don't have any support and you don't have someone who a helper that knows your team, you just never write those notes. And so, or you never have the hard conversation. So my view is always AI assisted is better than not at all.
Great. So, and I'm definitely enrolled in this idea. So, love the idea, but also I know if we shift a little bit to leadership and leading an organization, I definitely expect how it hasn't been an easy journey. For those people like you that have a great idea, they are embracing the most critical significant change in the history of technology, at least in the last 10 years or 20 years after the boom of the web. But it hasn't been easy, and it's never easy to lead an organization, because clearly, the reality of leading as a CEO is our own identity, comes in the way. Our fear, failure, risk of failure, you know, great things, but also hard decisions that you need to make. Either not supported by AI coach, but clearly hard decisions need to be made. What has been your journey from the idea then to be ready to have the success that you had? So walk us through what does it mean leading right now in the world of AI?
Yeah, well, the first thing is, as you said, the tech changes have been really dramatic. And, I think about it, I started in the internet, I started at Yahoo in 1998. So it was the early days of the internet, and tech, I thought, was changing so fast. We went from web to we had messaging and streaming and mobile, and it felt like everything was constantly moving and so fast. This AI revolution is like nothing we've ever seen. It's so much faster and so much bigger than any of those. Even the creation of the internet, which was a really big deal, wasn't like this because it took so long to spread out to people. I had access to the internet in 1993, but most people didn't. And it was very slow. Whereas here, every single person on earth with a smartphone has access to AI. So it
And it
is
happened in
so
12
much
months, really. 12,
right.
18 months, really.
Right.
Something is crazy.
Absolutely. And my I have had exposure to AI for a long time. My first startup was an AI company too, back where we like trained the models ourselves as a team. And
You
I
were
had a
behind
big
the
AI
scene.
team at Facebook and all of that. But this sort of consumer facing version is just so different. And so from my perspective, the main thing I tried to focus on is how can we I often say right now, soft skills are the new hard skills because the hard skills are changing so fast that the only thing we can do as leaders and try to help our teams do is develop two really important soft skills. One is speed of learning, like how fast can people learn? And two is adaptability, because the only truth, and I know the only constant is change and so forth, but that is really true now more than ever. We need people who can adapt. So as an example, at our company, even though when I wrote the original outline for a Rising Team in 2020, I had a section called Personalized Custom AI Coach. I couldn't really build it in 2020 because none of the LLMs were out yet. And so it was really exciting for me to build it. But even though I had that in the vision, it doesn't mean my team overnight was ready to do that. It was new for everyone on our team. And so what we did was every year we would do a boot camp and a hackathon. We would pull out of our regular roadmap, and I put my entire company through AI boot camp. Everybody learning how to prompt, learning what an agent is, all of this, at least a full day, if not longer. Engineers did longer. Everybody else did at least a day or two of boot camp. And then we put the whole company into hackathon teams where they pitched ideas, they grouped together all functions, engineering, go to market, design, everybody, and just built with AI and built things, that could be interesting for our product. All the big ideas that are now existing in Rising Team came out of these hackathons. So I think it's really important for leaders to pull back a little bit and to give their teams the room to experiment and learn.
And do you think that is potentially a path that many more traditional businesses organization they should really follow if they want really to understand, you know, deeply how to use AI? Because I don't think at the moment that is the I don't think so. At least that's what I see at the moment. I don't think that is the approach. The approach now using AI is totally different.
Yeah, it's true. People are just kind of throwing tools at people and hoping that they use them. And what then happens is a lot of people don't. You get the most eager people who try and are very active, and then other people just say, I'm going to do it the old way. And so yeah, we really, like, for instance, even when customers adopt Rising Team, we do full training programs for all the managers about how to use this. We show them use cases, we let them try it. It's it's really important to see how it would work in your day-to-day life. And yeah, I don't necessarily think every person at every company needs to go through AI bootcamp. I believe they will be more productive, better workers if they do.
Do you feel that is a product of your passion for AI, or was a product of your vision, your drive, your tell
I
me more
believe
about this.
about like why we would stop the whole company and go through AI bootcamp and so forth.
Yes.
I think it is a product of my experience living through all of these waves of tech and understanding what happens if you don't catch up
Got it.
quickly enough. So, if you look at the shift from web to mobile as an example, where I was probably working at Yahoo at that time, but also famously, Facebook almost missed the transition to mobile. If you don't get your company understanding those shifts quickly enough and deeply enough, you can miss them and you can obsolete yourself. And so I just believe it's critically important and the companies that do this best and soonest will be the most effective. And the challenge is it has to permeate through the whole org. And that's why you need tools like ours and others that are affordable and scalable to do that. Because the old way of, I think about it like we have a customer who has a new framework they want to get across. They developed like, what does high performing culture look like? We have a new framework. They spend a lot of time and energy on that with the executives, and the executives are then so bought in and deeply attached to this. And then when they think about how to go roll that out to everyone in the company, traditionally what they do is they hold an all hands, they may make some videos. In some cases they might make like a slide deck and give it to leaders with some talking points, but there's no there hasn't been in the past a really good way to scale that kind of communication out through your org in a way where everybody feels as connected to it as the executives. And it's just too expensive. Like usually executives, you spend a lot of money, like thousands of dollars each to bring travel together to the place, and you bring a facilitator. I charge $10,000 a day. Maybe you probably charge double. I don't know. You do much more of that than I do. And you can't do it. So we can work with companies now to create custom interactive team sessions, to customize an AI coach around it. That's just for a framework. God forbid you're talking about actual new tools like learning how to use AI. You have to get people in there using it at scale.
That's great, and I think such a very invalid, perspective. So I agree with you, Jennifer. So I have last two questions. So one is about your own journey. I mean, we just touched briefly about that, but I'm curious as a takeaway. I mean, you have been a corporate leader, and then you moved to founders, and now you are both CEOs and founder. I mean, you found a company, but you also lead the company. What has been if there is one big learning from that experience for you, besides the AI world and all of that? But what is some maybe good lesson and maybe other recommendation? Maybe we can join the two sessions. We can tie up the two sessions in one. Curious about your own journey. What did you learn from it? And then what are some recommendations that you have for other CEOs in terms of trying to embrace AI and trying to understand how to deal with all the things that we said today?
Yeah. Well, first, I want to say my own journey, it's bumpy like everybody's is. And I want to say that for the record so people hear that. I teach, as you mentioned, at Stanford at the business school. And my class, we bring in CEOs, we write cases about them, and we look at their most challenging situations. And then my students actually have to role play in front of the class what they would do in that situation with the guest, the CEO there. It's actually kind of mortifying. And we built the AI role play in Rising Team modeled after my class. But the thing that I share a lot in my class is no matter what company you look at, even if it, looks like a amazing rising, everything's gone great. No company looks like this. I don't know if I'm going in the right direction to you, but up and to the right. Um, they kind of look like this, it goes up eventually, but you go up and down. And my journey has definitely been like that. I've been a founder multiple times. My first company was like an exercise, an extreme failure. We pivoted 3 times. We renamed the company a bunch of times. Eventually it was very successful. But, I think the main lesson I've learned as a founder and a leader in general is it's kind of a formula. First, just get started. Like in the book, I talk about all these like world changing movement starters, and they all start with a very small step. It's not like you roll out of bed and you're Nelson Mandela. You start with like telling people about an idea and asking for their opinion or something. And the other is when you get knocked down, just get up again. And that my main lesson is like, what have I been able to do to help myself get up faster? Right. So I think about the journey as being like climbing a mountain. Some days are super sunny and I see the top and everything looks amazing and we're going to summit that mountain. And some days I'm not only at the bottom of the mountain, I'm like in the valley, like something really bad happened and I just feel horrible. And what I've noticed is that I have gotten faster over time at getting out of the valley. I don't not go in, right? Because things are hard and it's important to feel those emotions. And actually, I tell my team and my board and my family sometimes if I'm in the valley, I don't want you to try to encourage me. Just be like, oh, sorry, you're in the valley. And leave me be.
Leave me there for a
Exactly.
while.
But sometimes it used to take days to get out of the valley, and now I can usually get out of the valley in about an hour or sometimes less, depending on what it is. Some of that just comes from experience and seeing how, the sun does come out again. And really, at the end of the day, it's about, if you're going to climb a mountain, you want to believe in what you're climbing for and like who you're climbing with.
Such a great suggestion, and as an entrepreneur, it definitely resonates with me. So what you're going through, it's really real for all of us. We're done doing that. So final 1 or 2 recommendations for CEOs that are listening to this episode, Jennifer. And what is given what we said in the context of the tornado, in the context of everything is changing, everything is transforming, AI is coming and knocking the door. What are some suggestions you would like to give to other CEOs?
First, I would say is how AI can be strategic for you, both for you personally as a leader and for your organization. And it doesn't mean throw AI at every problem. It means that a lot of the day-to-day work can go away and free up your time for bigger thinking. And a lot of that, like I didn't think I would end up a prompt engineer, but I spend a lot of time learning how to properly prompt AI, some of it for my own benefit or for my own personal work, and a lot of it for our product. Like, I am not an engineer. I have a team of really talented, amazing engineers who build our product. Yet because of my leadership experience and my teaching and so forth, I build a lot of the prompts myself that go into our AI. And so learning and finding the sweet spot of where AI can help you and help your team is important in your organization. Second one I would say is remember the power of human connection. So one of the biggest mistakes I see managers make at all levels is I don't have time for team building or connection type activities. It's touchy-feely. I have 24/7, such important goals I need to hit. I don't have time to do any of that, I believe is a huge mistake. The highest performing, most profitable, most productive companies and organizations actually do take time to invest in understanding each other as humans, building those strong, deeply trusting relationships. And I believe that's critically important. I have a movie scene I like to use as an example of this. I don't know if you are a Top Gun fan. Did you watch either? In the second Top Gun, being on this critical mission, and he takes everybody to the beach and they play football, and the admiral
Yes.
shows up and he says, we're on this critical mission. Why are you here playing games? We only have this much time. And Tom Cruise turns to him and he says, you told me to create a team, sir. And he's right. I don't necessarily believe flag football is the best way, but I do really believe that AI alone will not get you there. It's the power of humans and AI together. That's the magic.
Great way to complete and to finish this conversation, Jennifer. So, the power of human connection. So, Jennifer, it's been amazing having you in this conversation and on the show. I mean, you shared very practical application, how really using AI successfully, where people should go if they want to know more about you, of course, and, the work that you're doing, Rising Team.
So risingteam.com is the website. We also have a website up at supermanager.ai if people want to get on the wait list there and learn more for when that launches. And I'm at J Dulski on LinkedIn. That's the best place to connect with me.
Great, fantastic. So Jennifer, thank you very much again. And really, I wish you good luck for what you're working on, which is amazing.
Thank you. My pleasure. So fun to talk to you.